Morning, good night, good afternoon, whatever time that you guys are watching this. Welcome to the video today. My name is Cameron Richards, and I'll be explaining about what I learned about the invasion of the United States in Puerto Rico in 1898. So I'll just give you a little background on this story. In around 1896, 1897, Puerto Rico was still under the dominion of Spain, and in 1897 they granted them self-governance. So they were given full rights as citizens of Spain. They could have their own government. They had their own currency. It basically like they were independent, but still a Spanish name was on it. Basically, that's what it was. And this really was good for the people because some people, especially in the south of the island, had anti-Spanish sentiments. So for the rich planter class, those who wanted to get more money, this was a really great thing for them. But it just happened that around this time, the United States also showed interest in acquiring Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Panama, and the Virgin Islands because these islands are quite large in the Caribbean region and they have fertile soils, many resources, specifically um, sugar and coffee. And so, if the United States could get control of all these resources, they could dominate the Western Hemisphere and push out any remaining European influences that were there. They had this mentality of that white people were better and that anybody else who was not white was inferior, and that the goal of the whites in the world is to educate, dominate, um, and to basically control the world because they felt everybody was inferior to them, and there was that they felt it was a God given right for them to take this. They call this manifest destiny. So that's what he did. Um, so what the United States did is they sent a spy. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but it was a very genius plan because they sent this one guy and he knew Spanish very well. And so he blended into the population very good. He was able to get travel all around the island and get the feelings, um, know the terrain, know the area, and they specifically wanted to know where they could put their boats for an invasion. Because in previous modules, we've learned that other countries, such as England and Holland, have tried to invade Puerto Rico before, but they failed because they it was not well planned. They didn't really know the terrain like that, and so most of them entered it through San Juan, and that's the capital, and that's where the most firepower is, and most of them feel that way. The English did get control of it for a little bit, and so did the people from Holland, but it wasn't very long because it wasn't very well planned out. But the United States decided to send a spy to scout out the area, and he actually landed as a fisherman, so he was able to catch the depths of the oceans and the best places, and so he found key information that there was anti-Spanish sentiments um, in the south of Puerto Rico, around the Ponce area. So this was really working in United States' favor. The people in Puerto Rico at the time were feeling that Spain had kind of abandoned them because they were really struggling a lot. Um, and so they wanted something different. So this worked really well in the United States' favor. So what ended up happening is that they, based off of his results that he brought back to the president, the Secretary of War, they decided to go in through Fajardo, and also enter through the south. So they basically went in from top Fajardo, and then from the bottom in the southwest area, and they found very little resistance. Um, the people were not really antagonistic against them. Um, there was not really a lot of defenses. There was very little bloodshed. It was not a very bloody war at all. And it only took 3 weeks for them to take the whole island. And so one of the generals, if I remember correctly, his name was General Mills. He described it as he entered in, people were happy, people were chilling, and we found very weak resistance, and they took it without any issues. other thing I forgot to mention before was that this invasion was part of a larger war called the Spanish American War. I don't know why I forgot to mention it, but the Spanish American War basically was a war against Spain, and the United States, and basically the United States' goal was to take all of Spain's remaining colonies in the Americas and in Asia as well. That was the Philippines at that time. And so this war started in 1898 in Cuba, and it the U.S. had increasing tensions with Spain for a while, and they were wanting to invade. They were really, really, really wanted to invade. And one night, there was a big ship in a harbor in Cuba called the USS Maine, and it exploded. It destroyed everything. A lot of people died, and so that was their reason to go and invade. So the war started after that. And by this time, the United States had been really growing as a war power, especially military power. The U.S. had, up to the point, they had been focusing more on land military power, but they've gone to see that if you really want to really dominate the world, dominate region, you need to have a powerful navy that the British had. So that's what they did. And by this time, the Spanish Empire was already declining, anyways. Now they had lesser technology, less people. People were not as motivated to fight. So the war was very quick. It took Cuba in 4 months, Puerto Rico in 3 months. And another thing that I forgot to mention is that due to the fact that there was very low morale, there was very high poverty, high literacy rates, people were struggling. The Spanish had actually put in laws to prevent people from talking because there's several different revolts, like the Grito de Lares, for example, um, that tried to really, you know, throw off the Spanish chains, but they couldn't do it because they didn't have the weapons and the military training. So, little fast forward, now that the U.S. is there, a lot of people thinking, oh, okay, we're gonna have, like, because the U.S. had been going through, economic boom at the time. They were seen as powerful, rich country. So I thought that they would just bring that to Puerto Rico instantly and the last week better. But it turned out not to be like that. At least not for the time being. For the first 2 years, Puerto Rico was ruled under a military government by different generals. Of course, 2 years. And during this time, it was really rough. People were still poor. People were still struggling. There's a lot of back and forth between the locals and the military government. And in 1900, they decided to put this law called the Four-Acre Law. And this law basically established a government, a full structure for Puerto Rico, and it confirmed its colonial status. Basically, they had a governor. It's the same structure as the government of the United States. A governor, which is the same thing as the president. The president, which was the governor, which was appointed by the president. You had the cabinet, and you had the judicial. All the people were appointed by the president. Um, there was two legislative bodies with 24 seats, which were elected by where it has the most votes in a district, and the higher court was made up of the cabinet, which is appointed by the president. This cabinet had 11 members. Six of them had to be Americans, and five had to be born in Puerto Rico. Um, so, and thing is that this basically confirmed the status because the Puerto Ricans, most of them couldn't read, couldn't write. So only the elites could really vote in elections. So the will of the people was not really pushed in government. And what they did is it ended up Puerto Rico had its own currency at a point in time. And the United States decided to get rid of it and devalue the currency to make it easier for American companies to bring in their supplies, their people, and start their companies in Puerto Rico and make money. This made life hard for people because it just made things instantly expensive because they had to go and change their money to US dollars. And yeah, so here's some of the consequences. And as time went on, the US eventually decided to abandon coffee and sugar and turn it into island of manufacturing. And so to this day, we're still seeing the effects of that because compared to some other islands in the Caribbean, there is not as much agriculture here. It's more industrial and manufacturing focused. Um, so that's what I learned from this module. It was to me it was pretty interesting that Spain didn't really have um, as much like resistance as they had in previous attacks because they were pretty strongly attacked before by the English and the Hollands people, and they won. So for me, it was interesting that tables kind of turned and that they were not really able to well defend the colonies. Because Puerto Rico is a very important island in the Caribbean. It is a they call it a key to the West Indies, and it's that because of where it's placed in the map. If you're coming in from Spain or Europe or whatever, the first place you're going to hit is Puerto Rico, and from Puerto Rico, you can easily access the other islands in the Caribbean and control the entire region. So it was a very important military spot, and that's another reason why they wanted Puerto Rico was for that military advantage. So United States won in that area, and that effectively was the end of the Spanish Empire um, as we know it. So this is what I learned. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video and have a great day.